Once upon a time, in the prosperous village of Umuati, lived a young man named Obina. Obina was the envy of many. He was hard-working, incredibly successful, and possessed a heart of gold. While his peers were still struggling to find their feet, Obina's barns were already overflowing with yams, and his business in the distant township flourished daily. He had built a grand compound, and the only thing missing was a woman to warm his hearth. Soon, he found love in the eyes of Adaku, the most beautiful maiden in the land. Their wedding was the talk of the town, a celebration of love, wealth, and destiny. Obina felt like the happiest man alive. But inside the dark shadows of life, tragedy was patiently waiting. A year later, the joyous news of Adaku's pregnancy filled the compound with laughter. Obina pampered his wife like a queen. But on the fateful night of her labor, the skies turned pitch black. The clouds wept violently. Inside the birth room, the cries of agonizing pain suddenly ceased, replaced by a heavy, chilling silence. When the midwife finally walked out, her head was bowed in sorrow. Adaku was gone, and the innocent child she tried to bring into the world had closed its eyes forever with her. Obina's world shattered into a million pieces. The grief was unbearable. For 3 long years he wore the clothes of mourning. He locked his heart in a cold, dark room, refusing to be comforted, while his vast wealth brought him absolutely no joy. Time, they say, heals wounds. Yielding to the intense pressure of his elderly mother, Obina reluctantly opened his heart again. He married Ego, a gentle and soft-spoken woman from a neighboring village. For a moment, it seemed the dark clouds had finally cleared. Ego became pregnant, and hope returned to Obina's eyes. He prayed day and night, sacrificing to ensure her safety. But lightning, they say, does not strike the same spot twice. Except, for Obina, it did. History repeated itself with cruel, surgical precision. On the night of delivery, Ego breathed her last, taking the unborn child with her into the land of the ancestors. 2 wives. 2 pregnancies. 4 deaths. The village of Umuati did not see a grieving man. They saw an abomination. Whispers began to spread like wildfire through the marketplace. Some muttered that he had a spiritual covenant, while others whispered that he traded the wombs of his wives for his immense wealth. The pity quickly turned into intense fear and hatred. Parents strictly warned their daughters never to look in his direction. The once celebrated golden son became a walking ghost. They gave him a name that pierced his soul deeper than a dagger. They called him the wife-eater. For years, Obina lived in total isolation, surrounded by walls of wealth but drowning in a sea of absolute loneliness and mockery. Years passed, and the mockery became the rhythm of Obina's life. Until one bright afternoon, a young lady named Chidera came to Umuati. She was an orphan who had traveled from a distant land to live with her distant aunt. Chidera knew nothing of the dark history of the village. One evening, while walking past Obina's lonely compound, she saw him sitting under a mango tree, staring blankly into the distance with tears tracking down his handsome face. Unlike the villagers who fled from him, Chidera felt a strange, deep pull in her spirit. She walked up to him, offered a comforting word, and smiled. That single smile felt like the first ray of sunlight Obina had seen in a decade. As weeks turned into months, Chidera and Obina found solace in each other. She saw his pain, his purity, and his innocence. Obina tried to push her away to protect her from the alleged curse, but Chidera refused to leave. When she finally announced her intention to marry him, the village threw a tantrum. Her aunt screamed in terror, warning her that she was committing suicide because he was a wife-eater. The elders warned her that she was walking straight into an early grave, but Chidera stood her ground firmly. She looked them in the eye and said that her destiny was not tied to whispers, and that she saw a man, not a monster. With no village support and zero celebration, Chidera walked into Obina's compound as his 3rd wife. The ultimate test came 9 months later. When Chidera went into labor, a crowd of cynical villagers actually gathered at a distance from the compound, waiting to hear the familiar sounds of mourning. Obina was in complete agony, trembling, holding Chidera's hands, soaking the floor with his tears, begging the Almighty to take him instead. But the God of the innocent does not sleep forever. Suddenly, a sharp, piercing sound broke through the tense atmosphere of the compound. It was the loud, vigorous cry of a healthy newborn baby. Moments later, Chidera smiled weakly but brightly, completely alive, as the midwife placed a beautiful baby boy into her arms. There was no death. There was no curse. Chidera did not just survive. She went on to give birth to 3 more beautiful children, filling the once silent compound with absolute joy and chaotic laughter. The villagers who had mocked Obina hung their heads in shame, realizing that what they called a curse was simply a tragic season of life that required unwavering faith to break. Obina's story teaches us never to judge a man by his seasons of trial, and that true love, backed by a pure heart, has the supernatural power to break the heaviest stigma.